we can't trust ourselves if we are constantly blaming other people. How can we not trust ourselves if we're blaming other people? Because we're not taking self-responsibility.
Hello, Thrivers. Welcome back to Thrive with Sharon podcast. This is another beautiful episode. And today we're actually having somebody come back to our community and talk about some new things that they're doing. We have Coach Mummabear, Melissa Wiggins, one of my dear friends who I've just over the past year, actually more than a year now, have been able to intersect on all of these different levels, which has been so wonderful. And the newest development for her is that she has authored another book, and she's getting ready to publish her next book in 17 days or something like that, right?
November 27th.
November 27th, which is incredible. But first, let me just remind you of who Melissa is, and then we're going to have her talk all about her book. Melissa is a dynamic blend of Scottish fervor, which is so true, and professional expertise. From her roots as a spirited Scottish lassie, she is known by many as Coach Mummabear. And this fiery Scottish native has also donned many hats: a sharp-minded lawyer, a high-performance master's certified professional life coach, and an inspirational speaker. And I can attest to all of those things. With a podcast ranking in the global top 10% and a voice that resonates across continents, she's a force to be reckoned with. But Melissa's story isn't just about professional accolades. Her upcoming book, Unfollow, encapsulates her philosophy on life, which is so good. It's so fascinating. Unfollow isn't a prescriptive guide, but rather a thought-provoking exploration of life's choices and possibilities. And she encourages readers to question everything with excitement, enabling them to discern what truly matters, to align their actions with their values in their life. So, Melissa, I think that's a perfect segue to have you come on and just say hello.
So excited. Hi, Thrivers. I'm so excited to be back. Last time I was here, I can honestly say your community of listeners are they will come into my DMs and be like, I heard you on Sharon Land's podcast. I heard you on Thrivers. They're just so loyal to you and what you're trying to do in your mission, and I just feel so honored to be here and be a part of that. So first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for having me. Again, I'm very honored. And also, I don't know if you guys can see Sharon, but she has a vision today. She's literally glowing through the screen. So I'm just so excited to be here and to be at this part of the book where I get to talk about it. Finally, this is so exciting. And we talked about this before, when you're in it and you're writing the book and you're just so, I don't know about you, but when I was writing my book, and you obviously have written an incredible bestseller and it's a brilliant book, but when you were in it, were you able to read other things? Because I couldn't read anybody's book. I couldn't listen to podcasts. I felt the fun part of because for me, books, I am a book savage. Okay. Right. Yes. I write them, but I read them. I read at least one book a week. And I have a whole library in my house and I love reading. And so not being able to do that for a very long period of time was one of the hardest things about writing this book. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely, I spent most of my extra moments that I probably would have been reading or doing something along those lines, like podcasting or whatever it is. I was writing, and it is different because I think that, I don't know, I'm going to flip this to you, the voice that comes out, right? It's so important to really, in writing for me, I really always wanted to make sure that the voice was very clear, right? And that it was clearly mine and it was coming through me, right? And I think that when you do read and listen to other things, it's sometimes hard the lines get blurred, right?
For sure. And it's natural, right? Like it's scientific. It's our subconscious, right? Like whatever we're watching on TV or whatever we're listening to, like it comes out in us, which actually is like a part of what the book is about. Unfollow is
Mhm.
about sort of looking at these different areas of our life and deciding, right? But from a place of excitement, right? One life, not from a place of shame or lack or fear, but questioning your life to be like, oh my gosh, I get one freaking chance here on this planet. What am I
Mhm.
going to do with it? Right? What am I going to do with it? And it's looking at, is this something that I do because it's something that is aligned with who I am? Or is this something I do because subconsciously, somewhere else, I've heard it, I've seen it, I've watched it? Like, what is it? And that's what the whole book is about through every element of life. So it's like for one of the things I'm most proud about is that the book is for everybody. Like that makes me so happy, you
I
know?
know. Yes. I mean, when I was reading through the highlights, right, because the book isn't published yet, so I don't have a copy of the actual book yet.
But I
Um,
did give you secret information that it's top
I
secret.
yes, yes, and it's been maintained as secret. But I just thought this is really fascinating because that was one of the things that struck me is this really could apply to any and all. There's really
Yeah.
no one who can't ask those self-inquiry questions, right? Or like kind of allow themselves to be confronted with the idea of like, are you doing this? So for instance, one of them was autopilot,
Yeah.
being on autopilot. I just thought, how many people, I mean, I know in both of our professions, right? Where this is what we're constantly trying to circuit break, right? Be present, be present, be present. So like how did that come to you and why was that important for you to talk about?
Well, I think that so many of the chapters are topics that are there are issues that, and I hate to use the word issues, but there are things that have became a problem for many of us, right? Things that we often just like can't see. And it's like that idea of I can't see the wood for the trees, right? Like I don't see it. And I think when you start doing high performance coaching or whatever type of coaching you do, whether it's working with a therapist or a coach or something, and you start sort of digging in a little bit, a lot of it stems back to the fact that like you're not alive. Like we're not alive and energetic in the moment. We're somewhere else. Like we're like you and I right now, like this is it for us. We're in a capsule, just you and me. And I have 4 kids in this house and a dog downstairs. Like I and I'm here and I'm in it. And I realized as I did more of this work, Sharon, that it's rare. And Sharon, when you spend time with someone, right? And this is what it's really about. If I'm here or not, or if I'm not.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
On some level, you do. How we process it is very interesting, right? So sometimes we might just think, maybe we're so accustomed to the fact that people just dismiss us and don't really pay attention or don't really hear the words that we say or, whatever. I mean, part of what I do in my work is like I talk with people about the things that kind of upset them, right? So one of those things always that comes up is I'm being ignored. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody hears my voice, right? So, so it happens, but how we're programmed and how we're groomed, right, allows us to continue to stay in that pocket for too
To
long.
think that it's fine, right? And then here's the thing that I find really interesting with my clients is, and one of the reasons why I called the subtitle of the book Question Everything with Excitement was because
Yeah.
when we started doing some of this work, people stop doing this work, Sharon, because the shame gets so freaking
Oh,
painful because it's like, oh, now I know that like I just ignored my kids for 5 years. Like they're talking to me in the car, but I'm actually like emailing with a client or I'm on the phone or I'm somewhere else. And all this stuff would come up that was not helpful to them moving forward, right? And like
right.
for me, I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist, right? Like I want you to be able to realize and appreciate the one life you have right now. So let's question it with like, what would it look like if like you got in your car and you decided for that 1 hour, right? Like 1 hour, this is the time I'm going to devote to my children. Research shows that when you pick them up is one of the most important parts of the day, right? They want to tell you all the stories, they want to do it. Like, what if you just started saying, what could that look like? Like, how would that be different, right? And
Mhm.
when you start questioning it from that place of like excitement of like, this is a way I would love to live, it just shifts everything.
Yeah, I loved that. And so you just recently, another mutual friend, Sam Joy, right? She just had her Empowered event not too long ago. And Melissa was one of the keynote speakers. And I loved that aspect. As soon as you started talking, because I knew your book was called Unfollow, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I knew nothing else. Right. And so when you said question everything with excitement, my whole body responded to that. Right. I was like, yes. Um, yes, because I do think that we're so accustomed to like all of that self-deprecation, the flatulation all the time of like beating ourselves up over, oh, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And we're always measuring ourselves against this lens of perfection,
Mhm.
right? And it's easy to stay in that if we're really not giving ourselves grace and not realizing that like we're being perfect is not part of what we're here for.
Well, it's not part of the human experience. It is
No.
not. And we don't want to be. We don't want to be perfect. And one of the chapters is obviously unfollow perfectionism, right? Like
Oh,
that's one of my
I know.
chapters.
Yes.
Unfollow perfectionism and follow starting before you're ready. It is the number one thing that I tell my clients all the time because we get so stuck. And when we stop and we unfollow that piece and say, you know what, I'm gonna like question everything with exciting to be like, what could happen if I did start before I was ready, right? Because look
Yeah.
at you, like you and I, right, being keynote speakers and doing these huge events like Fame Powered, right? Like phenomenal events, and it's easy to be like, wow, like I don't know that I'm ready to talk about the book yet, but like this is how we get ready, Sharon.
Yeah. Yeah. What is saying you're not ready? Yeah. It's like,
Like this is what we do, right?
yeah.
Like we totally, totally have to. And I feel like that sort of speaks to the sort of undertone of the book really is about having one life and living it joyfully and energetically and feeling alive. And that's what I hope the questions do for everybody is just make them feel that, right? Just
Yeah.
take away the heaviness. I feel like the timing of the book feels very divine to me,
Yeah.
because it really feels like for a long time things have felt heavy for people.
Mm.
And it feels like my hope for the book is that this is like a little warm cup of tea, right? Like, here you go, have a little
Okay.
cup of tea and just like enjoy the one life that you are so blessed to have.
And it's so interesting because if you're watching and you see the video of this, you can see Melissa's sign behind her. It says Melissa Wiggins Life,
Mm.
right? It's just like life is energy, life is everything, life is movement, life is change. Life is not staying the same. Life is not being stuck. Life is not being stuck in the heaviness and having to analyze all of the things that we've done wrong. Life is looking at ourselves with an eye of grace and realizing that, there's a divine reason why we are moving through or are making those mistakes. And that we feel a little pang like, oh, that didn't feel so good now that I know that I did that or whatever it is, right? And it brings us to presence, and presence is life. And um, so I love that. I do. So one of the topics that you brought up actually in the more beginning of the book, which I really,
Mhm.
really liked a lot from my own personal experience, and also for selfish reasons, obviously, because a lot of people that I work with have a lot of like medical like mysteries, right? A lot of things that modern and Western medicine can't necessarily heal or
Yeah.
cure, right? And I personally went through that experience most of my life, and it's not a coincidence that now I'm helping other people be able to navigate and heal and get well from similar types of experiences. But you said unfollow medical gaslighting.
I did.
I was
It's
like,
just
oh,
one people. I
oh.
started with a bang. I know. I know.
Well, can
Yeah.
you tell me more about like what obviously there's meaning in it for me. There must be meaning in it for you too.
Well, I think, I started off the book with unfollow medical gaslighting and follow, question everything with excitement because it's at the beginning of the book. And I talk about how did I come up with this sort of idea of questioning everything with excitement. And, the chapter is about my son who was, 20 months old, diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma cancer. And I think that's the other thing I want the listeners to really, really hear in our conversation is we are here and we're doing all of this in spite of circumstances. I think sometimes there's this sort of like, well, maybe, question everything with excitement if you have a great life. Right. And I just want
Right.
to say, like, read the book and you'll see some of the trials and tribulations that have sort of got me to this point. And one of them is exactly this, right? Unfollowing medical gaslighting. And I share about how one of the head of the oncology unit, sort of said some very unkind words to me and called me an idiot and all these different things when I said I had found this trial for my son. And my son not only had stage 4 neuroblastoma cancer, head to toe, he was in, they told us he has a 50% chance of living 5 years. And on top of that, he has this gene, and most of the kids with that gene don't make it. And so that was what we had been dealt. And I started doing what I do best, which is research. My background as a lawyer, that's all I did was research. And so I really just started researching, and I found this incredible researcher who was starting a clinical trial out of Michigan. And the trial was very new. And I flew up to Michigan and I met with her. And Cannon was one of the first couple kids on this trial. But I was called a lot of names in the process of doing that. But it really was the beginning for me. I was 29 years old, 30 years old at the time. And it really was the process of where I started to say, well, what if Cannon lives?
Yeah.
What if, like, I get to have this child be a part of my life until I die? Right. I started questioning everything differently instead of looking at it from this idea of like, well, the doctors are saying this and they're putting these roadblocks up and they're telling me I'm an idiot if I put my son on that trial. And I really started to move to this more introspective way of looking at things. Right. And thinking, no, like I know, and I'm his mom. And the very interesting part about all of it, and I shared it on stage, right, was that now that trial is a part of every single child that has neuroblastoma. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Imagine if I hadn't gone there. Imagine if we hadn't done that. Like, I've been to more kids' funerals than I have adult Sharon, right? It is a part of why I start with that story at the beginning of the book, and then I move into the things that sort of came beyond it. And
Yeah.
I had 10 incredible clients who allowed me the privilege and honor to share parts of their story,
Yeah.
right? Of how they've done this work of unfollowing. But really that was like the prefaces of like how it all began for me.
And you could have heard a pin drop when you shared with everyone that, not only did you do that, because I think that all of us can relate to at one point or another in our lives where somebody said you can't, or somebody, tells you that you're stupid because you have
Yeah.
this vision or thought or whatever that's beyond whatever their scope is. And these are the people who are educated to be there, right? And you're just like,
Yeah.
but I still am gonna question that and I'm gonna still keep searching. But it's another thing to follow it through to the point where you see such incredible success and improvement in health,
Mhm.
um, for yourself and for your son, but then create it as a legacy for others that
Absolutely.
now like it is part of the protocol.
Yes.
It's just that is so powerful. If there wasn't any more evidence to embrace the ambiguity of being in that space where there is no road, but you're getting an inkling, a hit, a nudge, a gnawing, a pull to go in a different direction, or to not accept, and to believe, and to
Yeah,
believe.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things I really love to share about in this story, because it sounds like I am the person that I am today when I tell this story, but I wasn't. I was a shell of myself, Sharon. I had just given birth to twins. Okay. 10 days after he was diagnosed, I was in one hospital, and then across the corridor, he was in the ICU having his first chemotherapy. I was not the Mummabear coach that you see right now, right? I just wasn't. And so I really want your listeners to hear that. I absolutely hated that someone said mean words towards me. I absolutely struggled with the people pleasing aspect of, this is a 70-year-old male who's done this for 40 years and I'm 29, right? I absolutely struggled with those things. They were very, very hard for me. I was a total people pleaser when my son was diagnosed in the beginning. And through just like, if I don't women up, right? If
Yeah.
I don't put on my big breeches, as we call them in Scotland, right? My big pants, if I don't do that, he might die, right?
Yeah.
I realize not every situation is that dramatic, but
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be, right? It's like
Right.
this sort of idea of like, okay, I'm going to unfollow the people please, and it's still going to be difficult for me. It's
Mhm.
going to be really hard to say, nope, I need you to sign this release. I'm taking him to Michigan. Nope, I'm going to take him to surgery in Memorial Sloan Kettering because their surgeon is better than yours. Nope, I'm going to go to Philadelphia because you don't have a stem cell transplant unit. It was very, very difficult. And I think often we see people sort of at the middle of their journey, right? Or the closer to the end of their journey. And we're like, well, I could never. And like my biggest goal in life is to have women be like, oh, but maybe I could. Like
Yes.
maybe I could,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, I love that. Even when it doesn't make sense, maybe you can, maybe you still can,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also love the inference of like, it doesn't have to be that big, and you also don't have to wait until it gets that big, right? Um, so I absolutely love that. And so I always look at it from just such a deeper layered meaning of like unfollow medical gaslighting, which is like, if your intuition says to you, don't get this thing, right? Whatever like medicine's telling you to do, then don't,
Yeah.
right? Figure it out and say, what if I didn't? And how would that affect me? And how can that help my life? And, whatever. But it's about honoring and trusting yourself. And that it's so infused in everything that you wrote, was just is like giving the reader their power back,
Yes.
right? It
A
was
hundred percent. A hundred.
so, oh, it was so clear that was that. So
I do not want, and I have said it many times, and I really hope that the message like comes out in many of the interviews that I've done. Like, I don't want you to read the book and talk about me. I want you to read the book and start talking about you, right? Like,
yeah,
this is not a prescriptive guide, right? It is literally something that is supposed to ignite something inside of
yeah.
you that makes you start thinking about things a little bit differently. And
Mhm.
like this work is building block, right, like
Yeah.
the way I've written the book is you're going to open it up and you're going to look at all the different things. There are 20 chapters, and you're going to pick the one that is the biggest pain in your arse right now. Right, like what is the one thing? Start there. It's
Yeah.
not like one page to the other. I didn't do it like that because I want people to take things also bite size. I feel like that's the other thing that we get tied up in the healing and we stop living, right? We're so in healing nonstop that we're not living. And
Mhm.
like the whole idea of the book is like, maybe you like take 12 months to do these 20 chapters. I don't care.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah.
like, right? Like if you pick one thing and that one thing changes in your life in 2024, imagine.
I know. I know. Yeah. And I think that people don't, I think that, healing is to change, right? So like you are healing by going through the steps in the chapters of the book, because you're inciting and inspiring something inside of you,
I
right? That
know.
is clearly then going to bring you in a different direction, and you're going to change. Things are going to change, circumstances around you are going to change, you inside yourself are going to change, the way that you show up is going to change, right? Same thing, different day, but different you, right? Better you, more you. And I love that. I also, you had talked about this just really briefly before, but the shame and the blame aspect too. So you covered blame, right? And I just wrote shame, right? Because they go hand in hand. They're like twinsies, right? So talk to me about the blame aspect, because I thought that was so good.
Well, I feel like a lot of it came from my own experiences, right? Like I've had seasons of my life where I have been a victim, right? Like I am very, you're going to read this book and you're going to be like, I don't know if I should be trusting this lassie. She's had some things happen in her life, but it's not about trusting me, right? It's about trusting you. And that's like the whole point of it is we can't trust ourselves if we are constantly blaming other people. How can we not trust ourselves if we're blaming other people? Because we're not taking self-responsibility. We're living in these self-imposed prisons that we literally create for ourselves. Oh, I grew up around alcoholism, or oh, my son had cancer, right? And then we walk out and we be in the world and we show up, just like you said a second ago, as her, as that victim. Instead of, if I take self-responsibility, if I move myself out from a self-imposed prison, my options are vastly different. I
Yeah.
start to see things differently. I start to show up differently. I start to act differently. My values are more aligned with who I truly am, right? I think all of us are a little bit sometimes scared to be ourselves, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But like, imagine if we weren't. Like, imagine if we were excited about, you know what, I'm just going to show up as Melissa. And I absolutely know that there will be some people that listen to this podcast and they're like, her accent is irritating. Like, she's annoying, right? But there'll be other people who'd be like, you know what, there was something she said that totally ignited it in me. And I think
Mm-hmm.
when you start to take self responsibility, what I have seen in my clients is when you move from away from blame and you move into self responsibility, you start to see things like, oh, I could do that. Maybe I could do that. Yeah, you're right. I probably could. Where before you had these glasses on where it's like you couldn't see that. That wasn't a possibility in your future.
Right. And kind of like the subtext of what you just said is that when we're stuck in blame, we're basically taking away our control,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're always putting our power in somebody else's hands,
Yeah.
right? Well, I can't because da 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 da, right? And blame is like subtle too, because we can be outwardly like projecting everything on someone else, but we can do it very subtly too, right? So we can say, well, I can't because if I ask this question, then I'm going to get too much blowback by the person. So I'm just going to like stay, I'm going to stay right here. Right. So we're basically like projecting and giving control for our future to someone who like isn't as bought into our life as they are theirs. Right. So it's the blame thing is fascinating, but really what's underneath it, I think, is shame.
Yeah.
Which is why we hide,
Why we
which is
hide.
why we're afraid to show ourselves.
Well, and the other thing is that the blame piece, in my experience, goes into one of the other chapters, which is Unfollow, Martyr to Mountain.
Yes.
And
Oh my gosh. I
this
was
is
like,
like,
oh, Melissa, why
I
didn't you
know.
interview me for that chapter? Why-
No, I lived there first. I swear I lived there first. Like, I literally start off the chapter by saying, listen, this is a tough chapter. Okay. It's in the middle of the book. And I'm like, listen, we're friends now. If you're this far into the book and you're here, like we're buddies, it's time to really wrap yourself up in your cozy blanket, make yourself a cup of tea and be
Yeah.
ready. Because this chapter is gonna really arc you and you might not be able to read it all in one go, but we're gonna try and do this together. And I say it from this sort of like, for me, I have had that where I'm like, I'm a mother of four. I have four kids that are 12 and under, right? Like I have a husband who travels, so I'm on my own a lot, or I don't have family. And the problem is that even though some of those things might be true, right? Like they're true. My second question is always, are they helpful by focusing your energy on them, right? Like when I start thinking about them, and always, then that's like you said a second ago, Sharon, that's how I show up. I show up as the mom that's exhausted with 4 kids whose husband's gone. I don't want to be her. She doesn't wear cute earrings like this and a cute green shirt. You know, she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do the podcast interview because I have my children.
Right.
No,
Yes.
no, no, they're fine. They're downstairs. They're
Yes.
probably, someone's heart at some point, but it's okay. Like, and I think that there are so many of us that struggle with that. And I really, that chapter was very hard for me to write because it's triggering, right? Like it really kind of
Yeah.
pokes the bear a little bit.
Yeah. And not blaming, but I do think that it's okay to say you may not have arrived at martyrdom because you decided to be a martyr. It could be programming, it could be systemic, it could be whatever it is, right? And especially identifying as women, I think that there's a deeper kind of grooming of martyring on women than there is maybe on men, or with maybe even just certain traditional roles, people who would take on certain traditional roles. Um, so it doesn't matter how you got there,
No.
but you're there.
And it matters that you know that you're there and that you start questioning all of that so that you can get out of it, because the
Right.
life that is available on the other side of it is so freaking beautiful, and like you got to go find it, girl, right?
Yeah.
Like go,
Oh my God.
lassie, go, like
Yeah.
please, right?
Yeah.
Like leave. And so I joke around in the chapter like it's time for us to trek down the mountain together.
Oh my gosh. I just was having that vision when you were saying that. Wow.
We've got to hold hands and go, lassies. Like we have to, right? Like we have to, because I really think it speaks to this idea that if we only get one chance at living this life here, what are we going to do with it? And we can't do what we're supposed to be doing when we're up there.
No, because you're just a stationary.
Yeah.
You're stationary.
It's like one of my favorite chapters. That's so funny that you picked
Oh,
that. It's so interesting to see like what interviewers pick. I love that.
well, yeah, I know. I'm fascinated to see how all of this unfolds for you, because this is so exciting. I know that you have published another book, two books. One.
I published another one, yeah, Thankful for the Fight. And that was the one that was all about my son's journey from
Mhm.
diagnosis. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
But
this
this,
book
it just
is very
feels so
different.
different. Yeah, it just feels so different. Like you said, you're just in a different energetic space, I think.
Totally. And I feel like everybody should write a book that is a therapeutic journey. And that's what Thankful for the Fight was for me. It was my let me vomit all of this out. Unfollow is I'm in this spot where I'm here to serve. I have a job to do, right? I have a job and a mission to do, and I'm going to do that with regards to people living their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I really, really do. I I'm wondering for you, is there a particular audience that you're thinking of, or that you were thinking of when you wrote this?
No, I mean, not I don't think I wrote it thinking like this is for like an avatar, which I know is something that a lot of us are sort of taught to do when you write a book. It really was like, I mean, because I have clients that are 18 years old, right? I have several clients that are 18. I have several clients in their 20s. I have many in their 30s and 40s. I've had clients in their 60s, right? Like my clients range the realm. And what I notice is the things that the 19-year-old's dealing with, some of the things are still there when you're 60 if you don't, right? And
Yes.
so I really wrote it for, you could be 18 years old and be like I was reading books like this, right? When I was 18.
Mhm.
Or you could be 60 or 70 years old and this is your jam, right? Like I didn't want it to be like this is a book for women like me. It's not. It is not a book just for women like me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was important to me. And that's why I really like spent a lot of time with my clients and deciding the stories that they had that I wanted to put in the book, because they are vast ranging. And so, yeah, that's why the book is really about life. It's
It,
about all aspects of it,
it
right?
really is.
Like
Yeah.
there's things in there about divorce, there's things in there about unfollowing diet culture, there are things, like there's like all these things that I've seen and witnessed in people that I think keep them where they are instead of getting them to like live life with excitement. And
Mhm.
so again, that's why I'm like, look at the content page and decide what's for you. So I
Oh,
love that.
yeah, I love that. But I really want to encourage everyone to go through each chapter, because I think it's like sometimes it's those blind spots are
Yeah.
then brought into focus for us, right? Well, because we have our own preconceived notions of whatever, but then when we actually go in and go through the way that you move through people through is
Yeah.
is where the awakening is going to come. And I love that you said, you don't want this to be a book about like Melissa Wiggins, right? Like you really wanted this to just inspire the reader, to have something being inspired inside of them. And that I can really relate to that, because that was
Yeah.
really it for me. Um
I
and
feel like if that's not what happens, I missed the mark. I didn't write it the way I wanted to write it, and I really, it's very important to me. And I mean, what better thing when you do your work to think that someone then used the tools you created, right?
oh my
The
gosh, I
tools
know.
you've created from scratch, right, through your own life experiences. And I talk in the book a lot about it, and I talked about it on stage. I talk about the messy middle all the freaking time, because I do not want the perception to be that somehow I have it together. I do not. There are many areas in my life that are a freaking disaster, right? And it's okay. And
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. And I think that a lot of people are like, well, I have to have all these 7 ducks in a row before I do the 8th. No, actually, you don't.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like life will always have messy parts to it, right? Like we have to unfollow that and decide what we're going to do. And so I share about things that I've messed up. And, I shared about the TV show I went on and I totally screwed it up. And I was like a deer in headlights and now it's on TV forever, right? Like there are just parts that I think there's comedy in there. And I really kind of make fun of myself a little bit because I think sometimes we take ourselves too freaking serious, Sharon.
I know, it's so true.
Like,
It's so true. It really is. I think
it's
I always say, I find myself saying this at least like 5 times a week. It doesn't have to be this hard. It really doesn't have to be this hard. Like seriously.
no. Like, are you creating fun in your life every single day? And if you're not living life. I literally will have fun every single day.
Oh,
My life is not fun every single day, but I will manifest it and it will happen,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I have now learned tools and skills to be able to reset my day at any freaking time.
Mhm.
Anytime, okay? A bad moment with my kids in the morning doesn't mean we have an entire bad day. It's
Correct.
one of the biggest lessons of my life, and it sounds so simple and silly, but it's like, oh, wait, I can like reset it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for that, right? Like it's and I'm teaching my kids that and my clients that, where they'll text me and they'll be like, I've thought reset 5 times this morning. You just gotta keep going. I'm like, you keep going. I bet by 10th time you're good to go for the rest of the day, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Or
we
sometimes just crappy things happen. And it doesn't mean that it's going to taint your entire day. I think, you know, I really do believe in patterns and signs and meanings and all of that stuff, because I do believe that this is everything that we do and experience is like a metaphor for something else, right? So it's like a practice round for something else bigger coming towards you, right? Yet I also think that we can really get stuck on when something happens, and then like that means the whole day is going to be ruined, right? And I look at it in percentages. I'm like, why
yeah.
let your whole day, 100% of your 24 hours get completely ruined by this thing that happened, and it probably happened over the course of 5 minutes. right? Somebody cuts you off
Or
when you're driving the kids to
yeah,
school.
yeah. Or circumstances in your life, right?
Right.
With just like this, oh, let me take this rainy cloud with me everywhere I go, right? Because then,
Right.
when my son was in treatment, I had lots of fun. It was the 3.5 years, the worst 3.5 years of my life. And yet we made a point to we would have competitions to see who could make him laugh. That
Yeah.
was our competition. Let's see if we can make this guy laugh. Most of the time we failed, but we just kept trying, right? Like it's bringing that joy and energy into your life because you have the tools to be able to do it. And I hope that's what the book does. At the end of every single chapter, there are questions that I ask you, and there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's
Awesome.
just
Right.
something that
Yeah.
is going to ignite something in you, I believe, because my clients have done all of the work, right? That will ignite something in your life that you might just show up differently, right? Like I talk a lot about, it's not about keeping up, right? It's about showing up, right? We focus a lot of energy
Oh,
on keeping up with everybody else and what are they doing or how can I do that? And it's like, no, 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 no. Like focus your energy on how you want to show up.
right.
And then I promise you, you will surpass everybody because if you focus your energy there, you will come alive, Sharon.
That's right.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Because you can be present with yourself. And when you're home with yourself, then people connect with that, right? You don't have to be the most impactful, whatever. You don't have to be the funniest person in the room. You don't have to know what you're going to say all day long. You just have to show up. You just have to show up. I love that so much. I'm so excited to get my hands on this book. So tell people, is there a way that they can be notified? I'm sure this is going to go out before the book is published. So tell people how they can get connected
Yeah,
with.
so in this show notes we'll have my email and my website and all that information where they can go on and sign up for my newsletter. And if they do that, they will get notified of it coming out. But they will also be able to purchase it on Amazon on November 27th, which is very exciting and so soon. Oh,
Is it's so
like
so.
so soon.
Is there anything that you'd like people to know that we didn't cover today about the book?
I want people to know that they're amazing. That's what I want them to know
Hmm.
because they
Agreed.
are. And I just want more people to believe that about themselves. That's what I hope the book does. That it creates all these things. They're going to start unfollowing all these things and then deciding, right? Right? Deciding what they want to follow.
Choices create freedom. It's amazing that you get to choose what you're going to focus your energy on. It's such a simple thing, but it is so powerful. I love that. And I totally second what you say. I believe in the goodness of all people, any and all people.
Yeah.
And also you don't have to be perfect.
No.
You just have to show up.
Show up and do it. Show up and do it bad, like I did on TV. Show up and do it bad and then do it again when the next opportunity comes up, right? Like that idea of getting back on the surfboard, getting back on the horse, like all of that. Like, isn't that life? That's our human experience here. But
That's
I'm
right.
very excited for the book and I'm so grateful that you took time to, spend with me talking about it because I really am. It does feel like it's like my last child.
I completely understand what that feeling is. I really do. And I'm also so excited to read about, the 10 clients or so that
Yes.
allowed you to be able, because I just think that I watched you as you were going through the process of writing, and I know that was very emotional for you. And
Yeah.
I'm
And
sure it's
so emotional for them. I sat with them while they read their chapters and they just sobbed,
oh,
um, and it's so beautiful because they're reading things that maybe happened a year ago or 2 years ago, and then they're thinking about where they are now and what they're doing now, right? Like I
yeah.
have clients who lived in New Jersey and, oh, I would love to live in Florida one day, like maybe one day, maybe someday. Well, guess where she lives now? Like there's
Yeah.
just like these stories in there that are about really just taking a chance on yourself, right?
I love that so much. Unfollow, the book is coming out November 27th by Melissa Wiggins. I am so excited. I hope you all get the book. And thank you all so much for joining us today in this conversation. If you didn't know Melissa before, welcome. She is just an absolute, just as she is today, is exactly how she is. She is just a big ball of wonderful, fiery Scottish energy, all wrapped up in absolutely beautiful, beautiful accoutrement in all ways. And it's just so, I'm so filled with joy to see you on your journey and to have connected with you in all of these ways, and to allow other people to really, you just, it's literally just like direct level that everybody gets to get this access for all of this information, and it comes from such a beautiful, humble place, and I really, really love it. So everyone, please follow Melissa if you're not already, and sign up on her email list so that you can get notifications when the book is coming out. And until the next time, peace and love. And I hope that you all continue to thrive.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.